Good morning, my dear students. Welcome to another class on popular literature and culture. This is your teacher Meenu B, and I'm hoping that you all are doing fine under these circumstances. And I hope to see you all in person real soon when we are over this pandemic. So, with that good hope, let us start with our class. This is another positive song, Blowing in the Wind. This is what you have to learn in your syllabus on popular literature and culture. So, this song, Blowin' in the Wind, it is by Bob Dylan. Let us meet the singer, author, poet, whoever it is. So, it is Bob Dylan. He was named Robert Allen Zimmerman, and he took the name Bob Dylan for himself. So he's an American folk singer. He was dealing with folk music. He was doing a lot of folk music and performing and writing folk music, but he later turned to rock music in the 1960s. And he was born and raised in Minnesota, USA, where he grew up under the influence of the music of Hank Williams, the Little Richards, Elvis Presley, John Ray, etc. And he was also, we can say, he was inspired by beat poetry and folk music. So he began performing folk music. And later he adopted the last name Dylan after the Welsh poet Dylan Thomas. Because Dylan Thomas, as students of literature might know already, he is known for his bohemian lifestyle and all. Maybe that might have inspired a young Bob Dylan to adopt his name. Dylan Thomas wrote poems which are romantic in nature. His poetry is called new romantic poetry. So that might be another reason why Bob Dylan was inspired by Dylan Thomas. So to pursue a career in music, he moved from Minnesota to New York. And as soon as he moved to New York, he started performing in the coffee shops and scenes like that. And he picked up a lot of opportunities, and he started making music. And soon he was noticed for his quirky voice and his identity as a rebel with a cause. Soon he became really popular and famous at a really young age also. And if you look at the lyrics of his songs, it has qualities of rock and roll and a romantic innuendo between a boy and a girl, because he was quite young when he was making these songs. And we can also see the intellectualism of classic literature and poetry. So Bob Dylan, he is hailed as the Shakespeare of his generation. In addition to all this, he was actually perceived as a singer of protest songs and a politically charged artist with a whole other agenda, even though he denied it at some points in time. And he was awarded the Nobel Prize for Literature in 2016. Let us now look at the background of the song Blowin' in the Wind. So this song, it was written in 1962 when Bob Dylan was a mere 21 years old. So he was a young man living in New York, and he made this song. It originally released as a single, but later it was included in his 1963 album, The Freewheeling Bob Dylan. The picture of the cover of which is shown here. So this song, if you think about it, it is often described as a protest song. Let us look at the theme of this song. So it was found that this song was inspired by a passage taken from Woody Guthrie's autobiography, which is titled Bound for Glory. Bound for Glory. In this particular autobiography, Guthrie compared his political sensibility to newspapers blowing in the wind of New York City streets and alleys. So that is actually a sight which was common during those times in the city of New York. In empty alleys and streets, you could see the wind blowing pieces of newspaper or sheets of newspaper around. So that was a constant sight in New York. Uh, so um, this particular person, Woody Guthrie, he compared his political sensibility to such a picture. Now, let's see what Dylan himself thinks about this song. He was only 21 years old when he made this song. So he says that there ain't too much I can say about this song, except that the answer is blowing in the wind. It ain't in no book or movie or TV show or discussion group. Man, it's in the wind and it's blowing in the wind. Too many of these hip people are telling me where the answer is, but oh, I won't believe that. I still say it's in the wind, and just like a restless piece of paper, it's got to come down some. But the only trouble is that no one picks up the answer, and when it comes down, so not too many people get to see and know, and then it flies away. It still say, I still say that some of the biggest criminals are those that turn their heads away when they see wrong and know it's wrong. I'm only 21 years old, and I know that there's been too many wars. You people over 21, you're older and smarter. Now, this is what Dylan himself says about the song. He tries to say that, he tries to provide the answer to some philosophical questions about life. But he says that the answer is actually out there, it is blowing in the wind. You cannot find answers to the questions about life in a book or a movie or a TV show or a discussion group. It is out there in the wind, it is blowing in the wind. So that is what is blowing in the wind. Dylan has his own take on that phrase. We'll come to that. So let's just check on some more background details of this song. So when we think about the political background of the song, earlier I mentioned that this was considered as a protest song. So if you consider the political background of the song, it definitely has got strong ties to the civil rights movement happening in the USA in 1960s. Now about civil rights movement, it was a decades long campaign by African Americans to end racial discrimination, segregation, etc. in the country. If you know about the political climate in America in the 60s, there was a lot of strife and struggle for the African American population or any minority for that matter. They were pushed to the margins, they were denied any kind of honor in life. So there was active protests and campaigns going on in that particular political climate for the upliftment of African Americans. So it is against this political background that the song was composed. And the song was played and celebrated at many gatherings during these civil rights movement protests. Like, for example, this song was played at the Lincoln Memorial right before the famous I Have a Dream speech of Martin Luther King. So you can see the first two pictures on the right side are from the civil rights movement meetings and gatherings in America. And another context which we can place the song at is, so it was found that the melody, the tune of the song, it is identified as an adaptation of an old African American spiritual. It is titled No More Auction Block, We Shall Overcome. So it is from this song. This song was actually sung by former slaves who fled to Nova Scotia after Britain abolished slavery in 1833. So this was a song which was said to have been sung by former slaves who got freedom. So that is another context, and another context in which we can place the song is against Vietnam War. It was a 19-year-long war in which US was an ally from 1955 to 75. So there were anti-war sentiments and there were supporters of these sentiments. They used to sing and quote lines of these songs um, to support their campaigns. So we can place this song against the background of all these political happenings. Now we'll move to the structure and style of the song. So this song is sung in a very carefree and easy style. It has a very simple tune. It is sung with the accompaniment of guitar. This song instantly creates a feeling of intimacy. You feel like you have heard this song somewhere because it has somewhat of a familiar melody. So the critic Michael Gray, he suggested that the lyrics of the song definitely has got biblical influence. For example, in this song we can see a repetition of rhetorical questions. This model is used in New Testament of the Bible and also the book of Ezekiel in Old Testament. And if we look at the structure of this song, it is set like a series of rhetorical questions. Now, rhetorical questions are questions which doesn't have any answers, or the answers are actually contained in the questions themselves in itself. So these rhetorical questions, he asks a series of rhetorical questions. Three sets of questions are given in three different stanzas, and a common answer is given to all these questions. Now, these three sets of three questions each, these are rhetorical and philosophical and heavily pregnant with serious thought. There is a lot of thought you have to put in into each of these questions. And all these questions, 9 questions in all, are given a general answer through a very common refrain. A couple of lines that repeats itself at the end of every stanza. Let us now look at the song. How many roads must a man walk down before you call him a man? Yes, and how many seas must a white dove sail before she sleeps in the sand? Yes, and how many times must the cannonballs fly before they are forever banned? The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing in the wind. Now, I promise I'll sing you this song in our live class. Unfortunately, it's not advisable for me to sing in this video. Anyway, let's read stanza by stanza and discuss what this is about. Let's move to the discussion of first stanza. I just read that to you. So the first question is, how many roads must a man walk down before you call him a man? The singer or the poet, here he wonders about the terrible journey that is supposed to be undertaken by a man just to claim the identity of a man. How far has a man got to walk before you actually call him a man? So it can be thought of in two different ways. First of all, we can think that this is a rhetorical wondering of the singer about the plight of the African American population. They were generally considered as lesser human beings in that particular political environment in America. So maybe he was thinking about the plight of African American. When will they get enough dignity to be called a fellow human being? That might be one particular uh, interpretation of this first question. Another interpretation can be it can be a general philosophical thought about mankind in general, about all humans in general. Just to become qualified as a man or any human in general, you have to face a lot of travails and ordeals in life. In daily life, you have to go through a lot of ordeals. That might be what he is thinking about here. So it could be interpreted in two different ways here. So how many roads or how long, how far have you got to walk until you get the dignity you deserve in life? So the next question, yes, and how many seas must a white dove sail before she sleeps in the sand? Now here you get a wonderful, beautiful visual imagery of a white dove flying over seas, and it has had a long flight over the seas. There is not a place to rest for it. Finally, she could sleep peacefully in the sand when she reaches the shore. So the singer here, he is wondering about the long, endless flight of a dove over vast seas until it can rest. Now, dove, as you know, is a universal symbol of peace. So, this particular question might mean the terrible path one has to travel for establishing peace, not just inner peace, the peace in the outside world too. So, just to get a peace, just to establish peace, you will have to fly over endless seas. So, how many oceans, how many seas do we have to fly over until we can get some peace and quiet in the world? That is indeed a very serious philosophical question to think about. Why doesn't peace come easily? Next question is yes, and how many times must the cannonballs fly before they are forever banned? This is precisely the lines which are quoted the most in this song. So here the singer is thinking about war and its destructive effects. And he wonders how many shots have to be fired before war is banned altogether, before cannonballs are banned altogether, before any kind of firearms are banned altogether. So the pain and terror of warfare is all around us. So the war is such a mess that it destroys lives, it tears apart families. It is very terrifying indeed. So these lines were often quoted many times in relation to anti-Vietnam War sentiments. So this is the first stanza. We'll come to the refrain later. Let's move on to the second stanza now. In the second stanza also three questions are repeated. How many years can a mountain exist before it is washed to the sea? Now the singer is pondering about the existence of mountains. Mountains stand up tall with all their might. Mountains, when we think about mountains, we feel a sense of fortitude, strength, feel that it stands for resilience against all bad weathers. The mountain still stands from the beginning of time to the end of time. But even mountains, in the course of nature, it sometimes ends up, actually most often it will end up washed to the sea. So mountains it can stand for strong and powerful people or power structures in the world. You might feel like the power structures in this world, the kind of dominant power structures which we have around us, it might be constant, it might remain forever. But here he gives us another thought that it might not be forever, it will also fall, the power structures will also change. Let's move on to the next question now. Yes, and how many years can some people exist before they are allowed to be free? So that is the core of the poem, of the song. The singer here, he now turns his attention to those people around him who are not free to live their life, who are not free to live their life in dignity and pride, who still exist in bondage. So this we can actually point to the origin of the song from a slave song. We learned earlier that this was actually inspired by the melody is a direct adaptation of a slave song by slaves who were freed from Britain and during their flight to Nova Scotia, that is when they sang this song. So, thinking about the bondage and slavery that was persisting around him, even though the slavery was abolished during the Civil War and during the Civil Rights Movement and all, he kept thinking that even though slavery was abolished, there are still people living around him indignified. They cannot get positions that white people could get. And they are denied entry to certain places. They are segregated. They are not allowed to live in the same neighborhood as white people. So there are all these social evils that are going on around him. And he is asking here, how many years can some people exist before they are allowed to be free? Even now, people are not free to live according to their wishes. How many years will this go on?
for. So that is again a very serious thing to think about. And next question is, yes, and how many times can a man turn his head, pretending he just doesn't see? Now, Dylan is actually pointing to the indifference of humankind around him. How many times will you just walk by pretending that you don't see the sufferings of people around you? You have people who are suffering, who are treated as lesser human beings, especially in America in the 1960s, the plight of African Americans, the way they were treated. But you were just walking around, closing your eyes to their suffering, feeling indifference. Now, how many times can you keep up with this indifference? That is what he is asking in this stanza. Let's now look at the third stanza. How many times must a man look up before he can see the sky? Yes, and how many years must one man have before he can hear people cry? Yes, and how many deaths will it take till he knows that too many people have died? Here also we see three questions asked rhetorically. So let's look at the first question again. How many times must a man look up before he can see the sky? So the poet is asking here rhetorically how many times it would take a man to look up and see the sky. So it can be interpreted in two different ways. Sky is a symbol of freedom. So it can be once again an allusion to slave trade and the underprivileged living in bondage. Um, I'm reminded of the plight of slaves in southern plantations in America, especially in southern America. There were these cotton plantations, especially owned by white people, I guess. And in these plantations, they used black slaves they bought in auctions from African countries. Most often, families were separated in this slave trade and all. So while they are doing heavy labor in these plantations, there were cotton plantations, sugarcane plantations, all kinds of plantations, I guess. But I've heard of cotton and sugarcane plantations in America. They never had a time of leisure, a moment of leisure to look up at the sky, to have a sense of freedom. So the sky as a symbol of freedom, it can be an allusion to the slave trade and the underprivileged living in bondage. Now, another way we can interpret this looking up at the sky is the sky as a symbol of beauty. Now, this can be applied for all of mankind. We are all living a mundane and trivial existence. We are living our day to day lives. We are not realizing much of the beauty around us. So, how long will it take the man to stop for a moment and enjoy, look up at the sky and enjoy the beauty around them? That could be another interpretation. Now, let's move on to the second question in the third stanza. Yes, and how many years must one man have before he can hear people cry? So, this is again our singer pointing at the indifference around him. Now, humans have become experts in turning their ears deaf towards the cries and sufferings of those around him. So, this is one more plea to the people around him to be attentive and mindful to the sufferings of African Americans and the underprivileged around him. Not just the African American population, but all of the marginalized people around him. People who are suffering, people who are fighting for basic human rights. There is a plea by the singer to be attentive to them. Final question is, yes, and how many deaths will it take till he knows that too many people have died? So finally, the poet is exclaiming about the vast number of deaths around him, the huge number of deaths around him, and he is wondering how many people, how many more will have to die until it is sufficient, until the realization hits that too many martyrs have been made. So, this is a final lament for all the people who have died in vain for lost causes like war. War is futile. We are fighting for somebody else's agendas. And he is lamenting for people's lives who have been that have been lost in warfare and all these kinds of lost causes. And some people are still fighting better causes for a better future for themselves and their community. So this is the final plea, the final lament with which he ends this poem. But to all these questions, there are 9 questions that are asked. One common answer is given by the poet. He says that the answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing in the wind. So, the simple and common answer given by the poet is that for all these rhetorical questions he has asked um, in this song, he says that all the answers it can be found blowing in the wind. So it can have a lot of meanings. So I came up with I found some kind of interpretations to this particular phrase blowing in the wind. Let's see what they are. So, one is the answer can be answered to all these rhetorical questions, philosophical questions. They can be easily found all around you in the nature, in the physical world. Only you have to look around you. Only you have to stop and look around you. You can find all the answers easily from around you, around your immediate nature will have the answers. The second interpretation can be the answer can be like wind. We don't know exactly which direction the wind blows in from. When we are experiencing wind, it comes from every direction, comes from all direction and envelops us with a comfort. So exactly like the wind is coming by and it is hugging us, it is embracing and enveloping us. The answer will come from any direction. It will hang by the seeker, hang by the person who asks the question. It will hang only for a few moments and then the wind has to change the pace and it has to go to the next seeker. So you have to be open to welcome the answer coming from any direction. So about life's philosophical truths, the answer, the solution can come from anywhere. Don't think of any source as trivial. So it can come from any source. So always be aware of the truth when it comes seeking you. It will hang by you only for a few moments. Then you have to capture it. And the third interpretation I found is that the answer can be intangible. It cannot be found that easy because you cannot catch the wind. You cannot touch the wind. You can only feel the wind blowing around you. So the answer, it can be intangible, like the wind blowing around. And the fourth interpretation I found is that the answer is out there. It is out in the open. But like the wind you cannot catch, you cannot grasp the answer. It is almost like the third interpretation. But here, it is quite out in the open. It is easy to find, but still it is not completely graspable, something like that. So these are the interpretations of the refrain. Now I request you to go and listen to the song again and again until you completely understand the truths behind it. And I hope that you can come up with some your own interpretations regarding what is blowing in the wind and are there any answers really blowing in the wind. So with that, we come to the end of the class. I hope you enjoyed this video and that you benefited from this presentation I made you. Thank you for watching. Bye. Have a good day.